As philosopher Jessie J once said,
Okay, coconut man, moonheads and pee.
Wait, no, sorry, she said,
It's not about the money, money, money.
and that's how I'm thinking about this Unity runtime fee. For those who don't know, Unity have just announced that from January 2024, developers will have to start paying them every time someone installs their Unity game, but not until the game has made more than $200,000 in revenue and has had 200,000 installs. Once that threshold has been met, developers are responsible for a one-time fee of 20 cents per install. So if a game makes more than $200,000 and has 200,015 installs, the developer will be liable for 15 times 20 cents. On the surface, when the numbers are compared to, say, Unreal Engine, it's actually still quite favourable if you're a Unity developer. You will be paying less for the same amount of success if your game was in Unity versus Unreal Engine. But up to now, the two engines have worked like this. With Unity, there was never any royalty. You just had to pay for a yearly fee to use the engine once your game made more than $100,000, which was around 1,800 euros. Depending on the size of your team, this yearly fee is either really reasonable or really bad, depending on how well your game is selling. For example, if you're a solo dev and you make £100,000, your outgoings would be the 1,800 euro for Unity. But if you're a team of 5 and you make £100,000, you'd be looking at almost £10,000 towards Unity. Unreal Engine's pricing structure is that for every dollar you make above $1 million, you owe them 5% in a royalty fee, and there's no per year seat fee to use the engine. So it's very clear cut. And if you sell your game on the Epic Game Store, there's no royalty at all. So if you sold as an exclusive on the Epic Game Store and you made $2 million, you wouldn't have paid anything other than the store fee to Unreal Engine. Which is worth pointing out, the store fee for Epic is better than Steam anyway, but you just don't make as many sales because not everyone uses the Epic Game Store. Someone on Twitter put this chart together, and as you can see, even with the new Unity pricing, it is still cheaper to use Unity if you have a successful game. So you might not think this is a big bad deal. After all, Unity is a business, they're providing a service, they've got stakeholders and shareholders and, all of that extra stuff. They need to make money, and currently they're losing a lot of money, so I understand from a business point of view, they want to introduce something to get a bit more money out of people. It sucks, but I think that's fine. But that's not the point. It's not about the money, money, money. So what is it about? What is all the fuss about? Well, back in 2019, Tim Sweeney, Epic Games CEO, pointed out on Twitter that each time you use a new version of Unreal Engine and you agree to their EULA, that's the EULA that governs your entire project going forward. So if you're on Unreal Engine 5.1 and they want 5% after $1 million, but then 5.3 comes out and they said, hey, we've added all these cool features, we now want 10% after $1 million, you as the developer would have the choice. Do you stay with your current terms and carry on in 5.1? Then, once your project is done in 4 years' time, you make a new choice based on the current EULA at that time. Or do you upgrade engine, get the new features, and just factor in this new cost? What Unity have done here is unilaterally change the terms of the agreement with no opt-in or out of these terms for all games upcoming and those that have already been released. Let's not forget, games take a long time to make, and decisions to use Unity for projects will have happened 4 years ago, and that decision would have been informed on not just what you were familiar with, but looking forward and ahead, what the recoup on the project would have been if your game was successful. On top of that, they've chosen the most convoluted system they could possibly think of and pushed out this change with only 4 months' notice, and they don't have a very comprehensive FAQ to answer developers' concerns and worries. There's so much up in the air about this. What happens with demos? With free-to-play games? With things like Game Pass? The Game Pass question has actually been answered overnight in a statement to journalist Stephen Totilo, saying the platform holder in that instance would be responsible for this Unity runtime fee, so Microsoft. And, considering Game Pass is an indie haven, and indies use Unity by and large, there's probably a huge amount of Unity games seeing mass installs through Game Pass, and this is regardless of whether the end user actually boots up the game. It's an install fee, so, I have an Xbox, I have Game Pass. I'll download these games that look cool. I may not even end up playing them, or I might download them and then delete them, but then re-download them in the future and then play them. So I've just cost a developer 40 cents by doing that. It seems like a lot of faff and overhead for Microsoft, even if it's not a lot of money. And there's also privacy concerns to all this. How will they track installs? Does the Unity runtime phone home and check in with a server? If so, what data does it send? The official line on this, provided by Director of Communications Kelly Eakins, is that tracking will be a mix of Unity data, third-party and customer data. Principal software engineer Richard Fine expanded on this and said that the plan is to estimate the installs based on a bunch of data sources, what we get from app stores, mobile measurement platforms, Unity's own analytics or ads, etc. So an install will be a mix of gathered data and napkin maths. Great stuff. And what actually is an install? Well, they seem to have redefined this too, and they keep redefining it. The current wording is the installation and initialization of a game or app on an end user's device, as well as distribution via streaming, is considered an install. In a previous version of this answer, it mentioned web browsers as well. It said distribution via streaming or web browsers. So, for example, WebGL plays. So, what has the wider community had to say about all of this? Well, I shared the blog post when it first went live in an industry Slack group, which has racked up 312 replies as of recording, with not a single one being positive about this change. I posted it to Reddit too on rGameDev, where it currently sits at 3.2k upvotes and 1.1 million views. Again, the comments speak for themselves. I'll leave a link to the thread in the description box below if you want to go and read them. Some big industry names have spoken out about this already. Rami Ismail put this handy, if not a little bit cynical, chart together. Aggro Crab Games released a statement saying that this decision puts them and countless other studios in a position where they might not be able to justify using Unity for future games. And Massive Monster, developers of Cult of the Lamb, echoed this when they released a statement saying that they will reconsider using Unity for future games. Speaking of Cult of the Lamb, Devolver, publisher of that game and lots of other indie games, said definitely include what engine you're using in game pitches, insinuating they will look unfavourably on games made with Unity now. But largely, there's just been so much confusion and a feeling of shattered trust. Because they've done this retroactively to all games, no matter the engine version, how can you trust they won't change the deal again? For example, upping it from 20 cents to 50 cents, or reducing the minimum installs needed from 200,000 to 100,000. They already seem to be backpedaling and changing things on the fly, and the cynic in me thinks this was a whole charade for them in a week's time to be like, okay, you want a percent royalty fee? Here you go, how's 5% on $500,000? Which is a worse deal, but at least it's understandable, you know? The ideal solution, in my opinion, for all of this was if Unity had come out and said, going forward, if you use Unity 2024 to make your project, once it's released, you'll have to pay X% of Y amount of revenue, just like Unreal Engine. You know, it'd kind of suck, but at least it'd be understandable, it'd be fair, it'd be kind of, you know, a known quantity. Unreal do it. They could have even got a bit more wins by, 5% over 2 million or 3% of 1 million. They could have done it, but been cheaper still than Unreal Engine. And that'd give developers a choice. Do they want to use, 2024 version of Unity and pay X, or do they want to use Unreal Engine and pay Y? That'd be their decision. But instead, Unity have just pulled the rug out from under them. This is just Unity shooting themselves in the foot yet again. I don't think they've got any toes left at this point. But what do you think about this? Do you think this is a positive, a negative, indifferent? But for now, I need to get packing because I am off to Tokyo Game Show. I fly tomorrow, so I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.